Okay, so, we love when you guys send in stuff that really gets us thinking.
Yeah.
And this one you sent is just fascinating. You're calling it Episode 2 on True Talk Show. And it's about this whole story of King Saul, right?
Yeah.
And it just struck me right away. We always talk about choices and, how the paths we choose kind of lead us to different places. And this story from so long ago feels so relevant even now.
Totally.
So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack all of this, try to understand Saul's story, and see if there are any takeaways for us, about personal growth and how to, reach our full potential.
Yeah, I mean, this is way more than just some ancient history lesson, right? This is a powerful example of how our decisions, the choices we make can actually shape our lives. They can either put us on the right path or completely derail us from where we're supposed to be going. And the material you sent really focuses on this really pivotal moment in Saul's life. It's all about how he handled this thing called the Amalekite command and, the consequences that followed. Man, they were huge.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So the story starts with Saul being chosen as king.
Right.
Right. And it's not like he was campaigning or anything. It seems like he was chosen for a specific purpose.
Exactly.
It really makes you think about the weight of that responsibility when you're chosen for something like that.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the source material lays it all out. He was meant for this. There was a preordained path for him. It wasn't about just, sitting on a throne and being powerful. It was about leading Israel in a very specific way, according to a divine plan. So everything he does after that, we got to look at it through this lens of what was he chosen for and what might he have lost because of his actions. It's imagine being handpicked for some super important mission, right? You're the chosen one. That comes with some serious expectations.
Right. And that leads us to this whole command regarding the Amalekites.
Yeah.
So can you break that down for us? What exactly was he told to do?
So the prophet Samuel comes to Saul and he delivers this direct order from God. Wipe out the Amalekites completely. We're talking everybody, all their livestock, everything. Gone.
Yeah.
And the reason given, comes from their history. They were Israel's enemies. It was a divine judgment. But the point is, the command was crystal clear. No room for interpretation, no doing it halfway. It was all or nothing.
But from what I understand, Saul didn't exactly follow those instructions to the letter. He let King Agag live, and he spared some of the best livestock. And he even had his reasons, right?
He did. And that's a really important part of this whole thing. Saul wasn't trying to be defiant. He thought he was actually honoring God in a bigger way by keeping the best animals for sacrifices. It's like that thing we all do sometimes. We try to justify why we're bending the rules, especially if we think we're doing it for good reason. Imagine your boss gives you a budget for a project. You could stick to it perfectly, but then you see this amazing new tool that's a little over budget, and you think, hey, if I use this, the project will be even better. So we kind of fudge the numbers a bit, right?
Yeah, totally. But here's the thing. It wasn't like God was okay with this whole, hey, nice try, Saul.
Mm-hmm.
It was seen as an act of rebellion. That seems a little extreme, doesn't it?
It does, right. But the text is really emphasizing this principle. Obedience is more important than even a really good sacrifice. In the source material, it shows that God values following instructions more than anything else. So even though Saul had good intentions, he wanted to give these big offerings. Doing things his own way was like rejecting God's authority. And it's kind of a mind-blowing idea. Even if you think you're being super religious, if you don't do exactly what you're told, it can still be seen as disobeying. And it makes you wonder, how often do we do that? How often do we think we know better than the rules or the advice we've been given?
That's a great point. And then the consequences were pretty immediate and serious, right? It wasn't just a slap on the wrist.
Oh, absolutely not. The way it's described, God basically withdrew his favor from Saul. We're not talking about something you can see or touch, but it meant he lost that divine guidance, that support he had as a leader. And at the same time, God said, you're done. You're not king anymore. Someone else is taking your place. It's a huge turning point in the story, and it all comes from this one act of disobedience. It really makes you think, one wrong move can change everything so quickly, especially when you disregard the fundamental rules.
Yeah, and you can just imagine how losing that kind of divine compass would mess things up during his reign.
Yeah.
The source mentions instability and bad decisions. It's like trying to navigate without a map or GPS.
Exactly. Think about it. If you don't have a clear set of guidelines, whether it's in leadership or just your personal life, you're going to end up lost and making bad choices. That's exactly what happened to Saul. Once he felt like he wasn't operating with God's approval anymore, he started acting all erratic and unpredictable. It was like he was driven by fear and the need to control everything himself instead of following the principles he was supposed to be leading with.
So it's like he had this chance, this destiny, right? But he blew it because of the choices he made.
Yeah, and it underscores how important it is to stick to your principles. Even those little compromises we make, they can have a ripple effect and lead us down a totally different path than we intended. It wasn't like Saul was a complete failure in every single way, but that one act of disobedience had major consequences. It changed the entire course of his reign, and he ended up somewhere completely different from where he was supposed to be. I think it's a good reminder for all of us to think about how those seemingly small compromises we make can actually have huge long-term effects on our lives.
So let's get practical here. What are some key takeaways from Saul's story in this episode 2 on True Talk Show that we can apply to our own lives? The first one that jumps out at me is obedience over sacrifice. But we're not just talking about religious stuff, are we?
Not necessarily, no. The bigger principle here, the one that's really universal, is about following the guidance you've been given, whether it's from your own deeply held beliefs, a moral code you live by, or even advice from an expert in a particular field. The idea is sticking to that guidance completely is usually more important than trying to tweak it based on what you think is best. Remember Saul, he thought he was doing the right thing with the sacrifices, but because he deviated from the instructions, things went south. It's like that saying, trust the process. Sometimes we need to resist the urge to take shortcuts or do things our own way, even if our intentions are good. Think about it. Have you ever skipped a step in a process at work thinking you were saving time, only to realize later that you messed everything up?
That happens all the time, right?
Hey.
Okay, so another takeaway that comes up is humility in leadership. We see in the text that Saul started out humble, but then as he gained power, something changed. Have you seen that happen in other situations?
Oh, absolutely. You see it everywhere, especially with leaders. In the beginning, they recognize that they're not doing it all alone. They need their team. They rely on a shared vision, core values, that kind of thing. But as they become successful, as they get more authority, that humility can fade away. It's like they forget where they came from. And Saul's story is a perfect example of this. It reminds us that no matter how successful we become, we always got to remember that our achievements are usually the result of a lot of different factors, not just our own brilliance. When we lose that humility, we start to think we know everything, and we stop listening to good advice. Think about a startup founder, someone who starts from nothing and builds this amazing company, but then they get so big, so successful, they stop listening to the people who helped them get there in the first place.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype, right? So another lesson here is about faith and patience. We see Saul getting impatient, waiting for Samuel, and then he performs these religious rituals that he wasn't supposed to do. I feel like a lot of us can relate to that. That urge to take control when things feel uncertain.
For sure. In today's world, everything moves so fast, right? So patience can feel like a luxury we can't afford. But Saul's story shows us what can happen when we act out of impatience. He basically tried to force things to happen instead of trusting the timing of it all. He didn't trust the process. This teaches us a valuable lesson. Sometimes we got to trust that there's a bigger plan, even if we don't see results right away. Resist that urge to jump ahead without having all the information or without being given the okay. Like, imagine you're waiting for investors to fund your project. It's taking forever, and you're tempted to start cutting corners to make it happen faster. But doing that could actually ruin the whole thing.
Patience is definitely a virtue, that's for sure. And then there's this tough one, responsibility and accountability. We see how Saul tries to shift the blame when things go wrong, and that feels so human, doesn't it? Like, our default reaction is to avoid taking the fall.
It's definitely human nature to want to protect ourselves. But the thing is, taking ownership of our actions, especially when we mess up, is crucial if we want to grow. Instead of learning from his mistake with the Amalekites, Saul blamed his soldiers. But true accountability means more than just admitting you did something wrong. It's about owning the consequences and actually trying to fix things. If we don't do that, we're just going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
So true. And the last takeaway we have here is guarding against external influences. We see Saul choosing to please people instead of obeying the command he was given. That feels super relevant today, with all the social media pressure and everyone trying to fit in.
It's more relevant than ever, honestly. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us what to think, what to buy, how to look. It takes real strength to resist all that pressure and stay true to yourself. Saul spared some of the Amalekites at their stuff because he was worried about what people would think. It's a cautionary tale for us. Don't let external pressures make you compromise your values or the guidance you've received. Sometimes being true to yourself means doing the unpopular thing.
So to wrap things up, this episode 2 on True Talk Show really drives home this point. The choices we make, especially at those crucial moments in life, can have a huge impact on the direction we take and whether we reach our full potential.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not just passive passengers in our own lives. We are actually shaping our destiny, or whatever you want to call that path we're on, through the decisions we make, our commitment to our values, our humility, our patience, our willingness to own our mistakes, and our ability to stand firm even when everyone else is pressuring us to do something different. And what's so amazing is that these principles are timeless. They're just as relevant today as they were back in Saul's time. We're all facing similar challenges, even though we live in a completely different world.
It's amazing how an ancient story can still teach us so much, isn't it? It's been a really eye-opening deep dive.
For sure, I think it shows us how much wisdom there is in these old stories. The human experience hasn't really changed all that much.
So, as you think about all this stuff we talked about today, try to think back to those times in your own life when maybe you didn't fully commit to something, when you let pride get in the way, when you were impatient, when you blamed others, or when you caved to pressure. What can you learn from those experiences? What are the parallels to King Saul's story? And more importantly, how can those lessons help you make better choices today and in the future? It's definitely worth reflecting on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive,
Absolutely.
and we'll see you next time.
See you then.